Hello and welcome to Stay in Your Lane, a recap and review podcast about Serial Experiments Lain. Today we are covering Layer 08, Rumors. I am your host, Lokamasi. With me is my co-host, Fefner Masamune.
Hello, yes, it's me, Fefner. Welcome back to Crisis on Infinite Lanes.
Alice.
When last we left our heroes, they were doing weird shit.
Couldn't remember what happened last episode, so you went with the generic descriptor.
No, it's just that description is always true.
Mm-hmm. And Jenner.
Hey, it's me. I'm Jenner. I'm gay. I usually don't know what bit the other two have decided they're going to do. My bit is, ladies and gentlemen, we have girls who love girls in the show.
Alright, before we start the episode...
P.S. I'm gay.
Jenner, you wanted to say something.
Oh, yeah. Hey, I want everybody to know I actually like this show a lot. And I think the show is really, really good. And the only reason this entire time I've been so, non-committal and grunty and making jokes and fooling around for the most part is for two reasons. One is the handful of times I actually got serious and talked about serious stuff, I kind of brought the entire mood of all the other podcasters down with me, even though my stuff was really insightful and I wanted to, keep spirits peppy. And two, I've lived a life, fellow podcast listeners, a capital L life. I've been through some serious shit. And that means I have a background in which I can talk with a great deal of intimate understanding of some of the stuff that I think is being explored by this series that is amazing. But if I say it, there's zero way to follow me up. And so I have not been doing it. So I'll be doing a bonus summary of this actual whole series where I don't do the bits and I don't joke around and I actually talk about the serious stuff so I don't bring down the mood. And also I'll be injecting some of the serious stuff in as long as other people will be willing to do a rim shot or whatever needs to be done to move on. But I don't want to kill the mood of the podcast by talking about the more serious stuff in the intimate ways in which I understand it. So I love Lain. This show is really, really good. So look forward to my actual real recap. Okay? That's all.
The main issue is that you couldn't talk about the parts you like about the show without making the podcast less fun to listen to, is how I'll put it.
Yeah, this would have been just nothing but trigger warning city, and it would have been a really real downer to podcast listeners, so I just tried to do a bit where I would be silly and let the other two be a bit grimmer. Because if I talked about this shit, this would just be Grim City, folks.
Yeah, but it turns out once we took out all the grim stuff, there is actually nothing else that you do like about this show, so it seemed like you didn't like the show.
I love a lot about the show, it's just now I had to, CinemaSins it to find, little silly things to, quibble over. There's actually a lot of, tame, fun, good stuff in the show, but for me, it's really hard. I actually just wrote a post about this. For me, because of how much trauma I have, it's really hard for me to notice the fun, silly, good stuff over, so much of the glaring, haunting stuff that is happening in this show. So it was just easier for me to joke about the haunting stuff because it's easier for me to know than to recognize the fun, good stuff. And also, a lot of the fun, good stuff I respect is stuff the other two podcasters have mentioned. So I'd just be saying the same thing. Which is why my bit just kind of became be a Joker. Because oh, the animation is cool, says Fefner. Oh, the shadows are awesome, says Fefner. Oh, funny theological stuff, says Alice. Now I can't do those bits. Right? Now I just have to be I think there's lesbians and be a Joker and yeah, I mean, again, I'll do a bonus Jenner's genuine thoughts and I will inject some of my actual genuine thoughts, but there's some serious stuff going on in the show and the show is amazing and I really do like it. So, there you go.
Alright, and with that, it's time to actually start talking about the episode. Our opening lines for this episode are, do you want to hurt yourself too? Do you want to feel your mind being scraped by a rasp? If you want that, never turn your eyes away. Is this, a really obtuse trigger warning?
A bit, yeah.
Hey, you want to get fucked up? You want to just feel real sad? Then keep watching. Otherwise, stop watching.
Yep, at this point, I have started to suspect that the person who warned me the episode that makes everybody go nope was 7 actually got the number wrong and meant 8, just so we're all clear. Mm-hmm. Yeah, 8 is that episode I think most people would say, okay, I'm good, but we'll get into that.
Yeah, Real tricky of them to put the fuck you episode just after the midpoint.
Mm-hmm.
Just when you're just invested enough, like, okay, I'm not going to drop this series. They really make you question whether or not you're going to drop the series.
Mm-hmm. There was this.
The episode.
Sorry, I was like, there was this fear I had last episode where I said, I don't know, like, if any plot threads are ever going to be resolved, or if anything's gonna come together, because this is reminding me a lot of watching Lost, because they have way too much going on and they're trying to do too much. And after the session, like after the episode, Luca was like, "You hate the show," but no, it's more they're just doing too much, and I, as a creator, don't understand how they could ever put all these threads together and end them in any satisfactory way. It's kind of like watching a CW show where like they just have to keep doing shit because the writers don't know when the show will end, right? And they just have to keep raising the stakes and raising the stakes. And, like, that's what it feels like. And if you've ever watched a CW show like that, you know, like, they never resolve those happily. Like, look at Supernatural. Like, you just they don't.
My favorite description of Supernatural is redneck Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah.
Because power levels just keep escalating and they get away from everybody really, really quickly.
And just like in this show, you can see how like they keep escalating the ridiculousness, and they keep adding like all this contrived stuff that they don't explain, and then here's more contrived, spooky, weird stuff, and like I'm just like, well, they're never gonna answer any of this in any way that's gonna make anybody happy. But like that doesn't mean I dislike it. I'm just saying it's okay. But like I, as a creator, don't know how they ever could. But yeah, sorry. Continue.
The first real scene of the episode is Taro in a MMO. He says nobody knows if there's a god in the wired or not. Whether there is a god here or not makes no difference to us. I'm internet agnostic.
He's very much I am euphoric, for I am enlightened by, and he even has like the Cloud Strife sword, like he's like cosplaying out here. He's being one of those AOL role players who think they are Cloud, like who role play as if they are Cloud Strife or Sephiroth. Like even with the big sword and everything, it was just like, wow, they predicted it, right? Or it was what was going on at the time, right? They already knew that this was
97, 98.
Yeah, so this was a phenomenon.
So when was Final Fantasy VII out?
Yeah, Final Fantasy VII was out around that time. If you were on the internet in 97 and 98 like I was, which is another thing I talked to Loka about, is I'm actually an internet old-timer who can kind of talk about this. If you were on AOL back in 97, 98, and I was, and you roleplayed on AOL, you would often go into chat rooms with people who had Sephiroth and or Cloud in their name, and basically the entire AOL chat room would be full of people who were Sephiroth and or Cloud role-playing as Sephiroth and or Cloud, and basically you could never hit them. Oh no, I dodged that because I'm Cloud Strife and my Buster Sword, or I'm Sephiroth, the one way. It was obnoxious. Like, I'm not even trying to fight you. Why are you starting a fight with me? I'm just here to like actually roleplay and develop my character and do storylines. Anybody interested in that? No? You just want to hang out in the corner in the darkness with your hood over your head, being edgy and broody? Okay, I'll be over here fucking the dragons. That was me in 97, 98.
Yeah, Goku would have been a couple of years out, right?
Yeah, Goku is a couple of... Just the plague of Cloud Strifes, y'all. I can't put words to just how many of them there were. My kingdom for a Tifa. 0 Tifas. Or I never found one. It was awful.
Anyway, I see that gigantic sword. I've seen enough Moon to know where this is going.
Taro interrupts himself to say, hold on, I need to kill this guy. He stabs some fucked up looking monster.
Yeah, the monster looks fucking cool. Continue. I'd fuck it.
Lain asks if it's fun to kill other players. And Taro says nobody knows what fun is or why things are fun, and then that's just the end of the scene.
I'm just killing for the sake of killing. Anyway, see you later.
Taro is like really obviously just repeating stuff he's read somewhere else and didn't quite get.
He's like trying to be
probably
edgy.
Quoting it wrong.
Yeah. There was like, again, this was before Columbine, but already there was this belief in the media that video games caused violence and was turning young people into sociopaths. And that a lot of the media at the time, in this time, was basically telling parents to basically not let kids play games or anything of that nature because the games rotted your brain and made your children violent sociopaths, which kind of true, but kind of not true. If you really want me to get into the psychology of it, it would only be me talking this entire podcast, and I would like our other co-host to talk. But the TLDR is, yeah, they can, but if they have proper parents behind them teaching them proper ethos, then it usually doesn't happen. If the kids know violence is bad and they actually have parents there to guide them and be actual real parents to them, they don't become violent at all. And so that's just the answer to that. But a lot of the problem is just these like capitalism and the effects of capitalism with these working parents who just sit their kids in front of a PlayStation and go elsewhere so the kids don't bother them because they're tired after work. And so these kids were raised with no understanding of morality or whatever, playing games like fucking Manhunt. Yeah, I can understand, right? Sorry.
But it's not like video games are inherently more corruptive than any other form of violent media.
Yeah,
It was just in the zeitgeist at
if
the
you
time.
watch a bunch of CW shows, you will also become ultra violent. And the way American media, especially, approaches violence versus anything more tender and loving is so desperate anyway that basically all media makes people violent because they'll show the violence front and center, but God forbid anybody kiss or hug. We'll just pan away from that. I'm good for tangents for a while now. Go on.
I can't help but be reminded of like playing RuneScape and stuff when I was a kid, thousands, and when he talks about like no one really knows what's fun or why. It's like I just like sitting there seeing that I can't help but think about like we would always have like you try to explain what you were doing when you were playing RuneScape when you were like 9 and 10, and it was just impossible to explain because you really did not know why it was fun. Like
you couldn't articulate it.
Yeah, you couldn't articulate it at all.
There's that ProZD video where he tries to explain that anime he likes. It's really good and really relatable. I like that video a lot, where he's trying to explain the niche anime he likes to somebody else, and they're just like falling asleep during it. It's very much the same. Sorry, Alice. Do continue.
It's the anime he's describing, by the way, is pretty good. But the yeah, it's just sort of this. There is a kind of mindlessness to some kinds of gameplay loops, and and that despite being mindless are like really really popular because they are viscerally satisfying, but you would never be able to explain why.
The best example of like impossible to explain fun, I think, are virtual pets like Tamagotchis, because nothing you do with a Tamagotchi is fun in and of itself. But once you have a fully grown Tamagotchi after a week or so, it feels fun. It's very difficult to explain what makes a Tamagotchi fun unless you just raise one.
It's sort of it's kind of a Skitterbox adjacent thing. Not quite a Skitterbox, but it's adjacent to it.
I'm sorry, it took me a second to remember what a Skitterbox was.
Yeah.
For anyone listening,
please, Alice, do the psychologist this time. I'm so happy. Yay! Do it. I could do this. Go.
Jenner, she can't explain it if you don't give her a chance to talk.
I am allowed to celebrate someone else doing my part. Please, Alice, go. I'm sorry.
But yeah, as Jenner said, it's a psychology thing. I don't remember the guy's full name.
B.F. Skinner.
B.F. Skinner, thank you. And like to put it in sort of like very layman's terms, Skitterbox. Imagine it is kind of a device that does nothing. You do action upon it and get feedback from it that only encourages you to keep interacting. It doesn't actually do anything. Like it doesn't actually accomplish anything, but your brain likes the feedback because you're programmed kind of to do a thing, get feedback, and act based on the feedback. And so it can put you in the Skinner box is a kind of machine that puts you in this loop of I pull the lever goes back, so I pull it again, and you just never leave. You're not actually playing a game, you're not actually accomplishing a task, you're kind of just looping yourself around, like, forever.
It began with, like circus animals and experiments like that. See, Skinner began training, like, chickens and pigeons. He started mostly with pigeons and rats to do, like, entertainment. They would like push a button and it would release some food, and then they would eat the food, and then they would realize they had to push the button to get food again. And so Skinner could train them to repeat those behaviors. And you could use this, it's called behavioralism, to train these animals to do basic series of tricks. Anytime you see an animal in a movie doing things, they've been trained to do those things via behavioralism and behavioralist training. So that cat who will walk up, and stand on the spot and meow, the cat in like Pet Cemetery who hisses on command, all those animals were trained through behavioralism with like clickers and giving them treats and just rewarding the desired behavior until they understood that was the behavior you wanted.
I was actually about to ask you if that was behavior, because I was pretty sure Skinner was behavioralism guy.
Yeah, Skinner was not actually the first behavioralist, but he's one of the more better well-known. Watson was one of the first, and he did, I can't remember the baby's name. Now, I'm failing psychology. He did experiments with an actual human baby, where he trained a human baby, quote-unquote trained, basically traumatized a human baby into being afraid of mice. But yeah, behavioralism is interesting and good, but it has a very bad history. This was way before psychology invented this thing we know as ethics now. It's why things like the Milgram experiment, the Stanford prison experiment, the wire monkey experiment, which I think I've told you about before, were things
on this very podcast.
On this very podcast came into being. It's not that the box or the buttons or whatever don't do anything, they reward you. But what Skinner would do is make it like weird in which it rewarded you. So now you have to hit the button 3 times, or now you have to hit the button 7 times, or now you don't know how many times you need to hit the button before you get the treat. And what it resulted in is stressed out pigeons and stressed out rats. We're good.
I guess I should say that it did nothing. It's just that it's kind of the connection between the action and the feedback are like weirdly arbitrary, and you got to get stuck there because, well, okay, it's supposed to work. And it's interesting to know, like we've talked a lot about behaviorism on Lain, because Lain is kind of doing a thing with conditioning and like how people are conditioned by the things they do and the things around them, like especially by the kind of media they consume through the wire. Kind of changes how they behave because it teaches them new ways of behaving, and they internalize those ways of behaving.
Yeah, I don't want to be too problematic here, so I'm going to try and be careful, but like Japanese culture is more heavily based in conformity and fitting in than a lot of other cultures, from my experience and from what I've been told by other Japanese people. My sample size is not all of Japan, though, but that's been my experience, is that there's a lot of pressure in conformity, and if you fall outside the lines in Japan, it's actually really, really bad for you in Japan, more so than a lot of other places, including the United States. And because of that, there's there's all that pressure, social pressure to perform a certain way, be a certain way, or else. And additionally, like, Japanese work culture is just really, really bad, and all of Japan needs to unionize. And that's my understanding of just some of the situations going on in Japan that were actually already a situation going on now. In the 97s, 98, Japan had just finished going through a huge economic boom that made the entirety of the world think that Japan was going to take over everything. And a lot of our sci-fi shows back then basically were Japan owning everything now because of its huge economic boom and how we were importing all of our technology from Japan. Like, that's
I thought that was the late 80s.
Late 80s. But again, here in the 90s, now I'm saying that boom is faded, right? And so now Japan is kind of worried that it's never going to get those years back, and it's still struggling with that.
Yeah, that boom was followed by like the biggest economic recession in Japanese history.
Yep, and so we're in that period of Japanese history where like they tightened back down. Like, everybody had a lot of freedom and a lot of economic growth and a lot more ability to express themselves in the mid to late 80s, but then again, the 90s and mid to late 90s, where we are now in the actual real world's timeline, they fell into an actual massive depression, and there was a lot of fear. But again, if you watch like Back to the Future, like Japanese people own everything, and fax machines still exist in the year 2015, which the distant future of 2015, we say now in the year 2021. And it's like there was this really real belief that they would just take over because of how they were doing in the 80s. But that's kind of reflective in the culture.
If only.
And what's going on here in this show is kind of a reflection of that current cultural depression. That's one of the reasons why there's so much grimness and depression and hopelessness in the show. Is that was really the mentality that everybody had. It's like outside we have just the internet to have fun on because nothing outside the real world is good. And there was a lot of pressure in Japan, even in those days, to go outside again and start interacting with other people again. But like nobody had money, nobody could socialize, businesses were bad, everybody was just getting on the internet, and it's only really gotten, in my opinion, worse since then. And where Shinzo Abe is basically demanding people fuck, right? That's where we are at. That's where we were just, like 3 years ago, right? Yeah. Please have sex, says Shinzo Abe. But yeah, sorry, continue.
Yeah, if we can get back to talking about things that are in the episode.
This is like the understanding the historical, like zeitgeist, I guess, for a better word, like going on in the show. It can help you understand like where the creators are coming from when they make these things. Like all these shows exist as kind of time capsules to kind of give you an idea, but because Lain is so abstract, you can get lost in the weirdness of it instead of realize the actual real stuff. Like once they get so deep into these 7 layers of metaphors, you're just like, it's like the cipher is too weird and you don't know what they're talking about anymore, especially when you don't have that understanding of what's going on at the time where this place is being made with the people who are making it. So yeah, in terms of like Lain doing some stuff, she is doing like a lot of behavior conditioning. And she is also having her behavior conditioned. There's a lot of expectations on her that she's trying to abide by, but also she herself is enforcing expectations. So, thank you, Ellis.
At the end of the MMO scene, Lain decides to look for Tachibana General Labs because she read that on the placard at the apartment that she went to.
I tried to find where the Tachibana name originally came from, and I still don't know. My spouse is on it. Good to continue.
And when she goes looking for it, she finds a porn site. And I just have to say, porn ads still look exactly the same, huh?
Amazing.
This image is all in English. It says, "This site free, cyber. Come on in." And yes, come is spelled with 3 letters. New pic post. Click here. We then cut to inside the website. First focus is on a stripper with Technicolor censorship instead of clothes. We have a guy rambling about Tachibana. So in this episode, I have a lot of direct quotes written down because we're hitting that point where like everything that people say is important. But for this guy, the only thing I have written down is a company as big as Tachibana wouldn't do anything illegal, followed by bruh.
Did anybody else laugh out loud at that?
I laughed out, like, knowing, like, here in the year 2021, like, with Google being, like, we're not gonna be evil, and now Google is evil, and when people, like, oh, Amazon would never do anything bad, and it's like, oh my god, like, no, like, knowing now, like, that ignorance, this is probably, like, an ANCAP, right? This is an ANCAP on the internet. Yeah, sorry, Becker, go ahead.
They don't do anything illegal. Morally, that's a different statement, but hey, if you got enough money, laws don't matter. Just find all the loopholes, it's fine.
Depiction does not equal endorsement. I don't think the show is actually saying this. I think this guy is just wrong. But it's such a stupid line. I just wanted to punch this guy in his non-existent face.
Yeah, this is the thing I asked Loka to talk about because he brought it up in a previous episode. That if a creator puts something in the show, it doesn't mean that's their opinion. It doesn't mean that's really what they believe. We're gonna get to the point where or it's something that they're really into or like want to promote. We're gonna get to that. We're gonna talk about that a bit more seriously when we get to a certain part of this show. But yeah, of this episode in particular.
He then talks about rumors about Protocol 7. So that's Internet Protocol 7, which is a real thing. At the time of Lane's airing, Internet Protocol was on version 4, and they were just starting to plan to roll out version 6. Version 6 is the current form. There are still some leftovers from version 4, I think, if I understand it correctly. That's just because some really old computers are still around on the internet and they don't want to cut off some important computers. But the way that IP works is that it only comes out in even numbers. So 2, 4, 6. Next one's going to be 8. 1, 3, 5, 7, and all that. All the odd numbers are used for testing and prototyping. So Protocol 7 would never actually see commercial or civilian use. 6 was in the talks, so they just went, 7. We'll add 1.
Yeah, it works.
The man says, whoever designs IP gets to control how the internet functions, and Tachibana General Labs is in charge of IP, in charge of Protocol 7. Throughout this whole scene, Lain does not acknowledge the stripper. I described her as a person who respects women but was forced to go to Hooters that one time. Lain decides that she's heard enough and leaves. We get a shot of the telephone wires. There are telephone wires all over the place in every episode, and I've not been acknowledging them, but it's just kind of a thing with Lain. When you hear Lain, you should think telephone wires.
That's not what I think when I hear Lain, but okay.
Lain sees Mika in the hallway. Mika is not having a good time. She is still babbling, not saying coherent words.
I feel bad for Mika.
Yep, don't we all?
I'm going to talk a bit about Mika in a grim way, but I feel like I've already talked a lot, and it's a bit of a trigger warning, but if you'll bear with me, you two, if you're willing to also talk a bit, both of you, I can go into this.
So which one of us is exempt from having to talk?
I guess, Fefner, please talk. Loka, you can stay quiet if you want. What's going on with Mika is what we often saw in my activism when parents sent their children to gay conversion therapy. They shocked you to try and keep you from having any time you had gay thoughts, and they basically tortured you to try and convert you away from being homosexual. When these kids finally, quote-unquote, graduated out, the ones who didn't, trigger warning, kill themselves and return to our organization, they were effectively catatonic messes like this, and we had to do a lot of work to try and help these kids and get them away from their parents who would have sent them right back again. The few that actually did show back up to hang out with us, the few that didn't just disappear. And it was heart-wrenching to see. But this is what gay conversion therapy... These are the effects of gay conversion therapy for the people who don't just kill themselves.
It definitely, I'm not qualified to actually say it, about a real person, but when first seeing her reminded me of someone kind of in shock.
Yeah.
Who's just witnessed or had something happen to them that is so momentously bad and sudden that they just kind of, their connection to what is happening just sort of, severs unexpectedly. It reminded me of, people that I've seen after, a car wreck.
Mm-hmm.
And how, just that a car wreck that had been potentially fatal, we didn't know yet if someone else involved in the pile was going to be okay.
Yeah.
And it's just not, they're there in the sense that they are unable to disengage from this thing, but not there in the sense that they're just not able to really comprehend what has happened.
People who've been through an extreme amount of trauma, which by the way is what gay conversion therapy does to you, also behave in this way sometimes. We've talked about post-traumatic stress disorder before on the show. This is, again, another expression of basically having been through an incredibly traumatizing experience where the person just shuts down and goes near catatonic. So, yeah.
And that's consistent with what we've seen with Mika.
Yeah, and...
we saw her traumatic events.
Yeah, and because of how psychology was in the late 80s and early 90s, where behavioralism was still really running the roost. A lot of treatment for trauma and abnormal behavior and etc. wasn't that healing yet until the humanists started getting involved. Humanists like Ellis and Albert Ellis Adler, like those people really changed the face of psychology. So, and Horny, please don't chuckle, but she was there and she's really good. Like those people really changed the face of psychology. But the treatment methods for trauma back in those days was flooding, which is just like if you're scared of snakes, we're just gonna pour a bunch of snakes on you, and now you're not scared of snakes anymore, and just like other not cool things. But yeah, there we go.
That's almost hard to believe. I believe you, but that's hard to believe almost.
This is what I said about how it's hard to follow this up. Bethner, do a bit.
Yeah.
Bit.
In the next scene, Lain goes to the living room and her parents are sitting stock still. Yasuo has the shiny glasses thing going on.
But it won't turn off.
Uh-huh.
It's only supposed to last for a couple of seconds. Contact your doctor.
Lain goes to the fridge. They got some milk, some purple stuff. No Sunny D, though. Lain gets some cola.
And they're not looking at her, just at the fridge.
Mm-hmm. And then Lain says, Mom, Dad, a while ago somebody asked me, are you really a Walker or Lain? Are your parents really your parents? It's funny, isn't it? Funny. And, like, while she's saying this, she is about to start crying. She actually stops at one point to, like, sob and shake for a bit.
For me, this is for me, this is really traumatizing because their parents, it's like they've got dowels. It's like they don't even respond. Yeah. I mean, it's not like they really do. They don't. They just sit there, like, staring forward. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, the parents don't respond. Lain finishes her drink, cleans out her glass, and then when she turns around, her parents have turned to stare at her, but they aren't saying anything.
Mm-hmm.
And Yasuo's glasses are no longer doing the shiny thing, so now you can see his eyes.
On second thought, I wish they stayed doing the shiny thing.
Yeah, for to Fefner, I have a question for you. I don't know if I've asked this in the podcast before, but is there a character who does the shiny glasses thing who is unequivocally good in alignment and on the good guy's side? Ever? Has there ever?
I mean, maybe, but I can't think of any off the top of my head.
I can't remember his name, but the Mission Control and Kira Major does the glasses thing at one point.
Okay.
Oh yeah, he's a doofus.
And he's a good guy.
Okay, we got a couple.
His name is like 18 syllables long.
Mm-hmm.
And I can never remember it. We then cut to Lain going to school. Lain's friends confront her. Reika and Juri sound angry. Alice seems hurt. And Alice says, you didn't do it, right? Reika says that Lain definitely did it. Alice tells Reika to shut the hell up. And Juri says something along the lines of, you really expect us to believe it wasn't you? Lain has no idea what they're talking about. Is about to start crying again. We're getting a lot of sad Lain these past 2 episodes. I don't like it. Alice then says, Lain, in The Wired, did you? And then we cut to Lain's sad face again. Then Alice breathes a sigh of relief, smiles, and says, no, forget about it. It couldn't have been you, Lain. I trust you, okay? This does not make Lain feel any better. Because we still don't know what they're talking about. Jenner, I think the way you put it is, yes, it's great that you trust Lain, Alice, but it sure would be great if you told her what everybody is talking about so she can stop panicking.
Yeah.
Man, they just assume she knows shit all the time.
Yeah, they do kind of assume she knows that shit, and, like, you get in this situation sometimes where, like, you know a thing, and it seems so obvious to you, so why would you tell the other person? Like, obviously Lane's online, so she read about this as well, so she knows what I'm talking about, or something to that fact. Everybody in this channel has played Chrono Cross, so when I talk about esoteric Chrono Cross things, I'm sure you all know what I'm talking about. It's just like, you get to this point where you think, like, because you know something is so obvious to you, everybody else has to know it. And I would also say that, like, Alice is in a lot of distress, this is probably an incredibly traumatizing thing. She probably doesn't want to delve into it for her own sense of like comfort, right? Because it's probably an uncomfortable thing to talk about. It's probably a thing that we're about to learn. It's probably a horny sex
Yeah.
thing, right? Is what we're about
If
to learn.
if I had to guess, I would say like she looked at Lane's reaction, saw just how scared she was, and thought like, okay, Lain doesn't know what's going on, so it can't be her. As long as we don't tell her what's going on, if I can still tell that she doesn't know what's going on, we know it can't be her.
Yeah. Yeah, and she's trying to be a good friend and spare her feelings, but at the same time, all it's doing is
Too late for that.
distressing her more, but distressing them both more, right? They're both basically like spiraling now because neither one of them is actually getting the emotional support they need from the other, where if they just could talk to each other, it would be fine. And there's like a lot of reasons why I could speculate this is going on. I already feel a little insecure about how much time I've taken on this, and I want to be mindful of people needing to go to bed. But my general takeaway from this is that both of them are trying to keep this from getting worse, and that is just making it worse. Right? And neither one of them, like one of them knows more than the other, and one of them knows creepy stuff that they're trying to protect the other from too. Because Lain is aware that like the knights are out there doing some weird fucking shit, and her parents are acting all weird, and her sister's acting all weird. She doesn't want Alice to know that devil, whereas Alice is experiencing this whole other thing, and she doesn't want Lain to know that either. So they're all keeping these traumas secret from each other and not talking to each other, and like finding support with each other is like, it's icky, right? You don't want to do that to people a lot. And like when you're a teenager, especially, I don't know how old Lain is supposed to be, I don't know how old Alice is supposed to be, they're probably 14, 15, I suspect. Like, you just don't have
around that age. Yeah,
you don't have the tools to have these kinds of like discussions with one another, especially if you're not like in therapy, right? So like you don't even know where to begin. This kind of reminds me of like playing Monster Hearts, where you don't have any skills to actually do anything productive. All you can do is hurt each other. Like all you can do.
I should have started a tangent counter.
Yeah, but yeah, that's all. But just like this is weird. We're good. We're done. I'm sorry. Thank you for calling me out.
This conversation ends with Alice's friends pointing out a teacher arriving in a car that doesn't look anything like the Akio car, but I still want to just call it the Akio car. There, Alice, can you hear it? If your soul has not truly given up all chance for hope, you can still hear the sound that races at the end of the world.
God.
I need to listen to that again because I want to know if they made Crispin Freeman read that every single time for the English dub, or if he just recorded it once and then stopped. Upon seeing the car, Alice immediately runs away. We then cut to the classroom. Lain ignores the teacher to browse the internet. We get a room of faceless people constantly moving their lips. We don't hear more than one person at a time, but Lain is in a room of people just talking nonstop. The audio clips we get are, "We cannot approve any more bills. How can such a nice guy be into such weird stuff? There's an extremely serious bug in Protocol 6. Damage caused by this may prove disastrous in the wired. Every night, a small childlike person in a red and green striped sweater appears in her room. When she was in high school, that pop singer hit someone with her boyfriend's car and fled the scene. It's gotta be true. I heard it firsthand. That was not the same person as the pop singer tidbit. This is a different person just shouting out this. That building's a famous haunted spot. If you look at a terminal at night, internal email shows up. There's nobody there. The nights don't exist. Some American student made them up as a joke." And then Lain yells, "Shut the hell up. Who even cares about this?" And I have the note, "This is why I left Twitter. I was in Lain's position too many times."
Yeah. I was thinking, like, somebody in a red and green shirt, like, doing bad, made me, like, want to make, like, Undertale jokes, right? Because, like, the kid in the striped shirt is, like, running the genocide in the Wired. But I don't think Chara wears red and green. I believe Chara's shirt is blue and yellow, if I'm not mistaken. Like, red, I was thinking,
green and yellow.
Okay, yeah, maybe Freddy Krueger, but no, Freddy Krueger also doesn't wear red and green. He wears black and red.
Yes, he does.
No, does he? Okay.
He wears a red and green. Because the director learned that red and green are, like, opposites on the color spectrum and don't, like, blend into each other at all.
Well, people with like
and he
red,
wanted a really jarring sweater.
yeah, people with red-green color blindness also just saw Freddy like looking like Blair Brown. It was just a
Yeah,
thing.
you're
Yeah.
right. If I didn't think about that,
Yeah,
sorry.
I was gonna joke like this is like a Christmas person, like somebody dressed up in like a Christmas sweater wandering around the light.
just just pokes your head in your room at night. Hey, do you
Merry
have any
Christmas.
Doritos?
Yeah, Merry
I'm really
Christmas.
sorry.
Ho ho ho! Now I'm on the wired.
It's like when they play like festive perky music over murder scenes. It's like that where this person just like starts like unsheathes his katana and starts going his or her their katana starts going to town as it's beginning to look a lot like
sleigh bells
yeah
ringling, jing
or
jing
I want
jingling
it's
too.
beginning to look a lot like Christmas like plays in the background as they dance around like doing a spree. But yeah, either way, yes.
That's not peppy enough, but yeah, it would also be good. Um, After Lane says "shut the hell up," we get a voice saying, "Don't you find it interesting?" Lane says, "So God makes his grand entrance, huh? Not even a burning bush this time." The voice says, "How do you define God? If it's the creator of the world, that's not me. The all-powerful ruler of the world, you give God too much credit. But if you define God as one who exists everywhere in that other world, if that's what you mean, then yes, I suppose you could call me that. I only have a slight influence on the workings of the world, however." Lane says, "Who the hell are you?" God says, "I am you. You must have realized that another you has always existed in the wired. You are merely a hologram of that other you.
I am you and you
You are
are
just a
me.
body." Yeah. I am thou, thou art I. Lane says, "You expect me to believe that? That's impossible." And God says, "But you don't think that the you in the real world is the same as the one standing here in the wired, do you?" Lane says, "But I'm me." And she cuts out of the wired. We cut to her on her phone in class. She looks distraught. She closes out all of her tabs
That's
while
something
side-eyeing
that's
Jenner.
something I can't do. Yeah, thank you.
And when she finally looks back up, all of her classmates are staring at her, and so is her teacher.
And she's in her underwear and she's got a presentation to do.
The prom's tomorrow. She looks at her screen again, and it says, "Lane is a peeping Tom." Then I think we cut to commercial. Like, it fades out, but it's kind of an unnecessary fade in the actual episode. So I feel like that's where the commercial would have been.
I don't know. I feel like that's the only way to end it. Just, all right. Well, everybody's staring. Goodbye. Here's my mental state.
Yeah, they could have just cut to the door and have Lane run out of the classroom, which is the very next thing.
Yeah, I think like
Um,
when you do have the dream of you're naked and you need to do a presentation, you do just wake up when everybody starts staring at you. That's how it happened to me when I've had those dreams. So this is incredibly realistic of that. Yeah.
as she is running around the school, everybody that she runs into is staring at her, and to me it reaches the absurdity when she runs to the window and looks out in the yard, and the kids are staring at her from out in the yard.
Yep.
Like, how do they even know that she's there? You can't see people in buildings.
Yeah, weird. It's like some sort of fucked up situation.
Yeah, like it just it's absurd to a point, but that was just the point where it hit me of like, okay, this is beyond like something that could happen to you. This is absurd. Lane starts looking at her phone while crying out for Alice. Her phone has a message from Alice. It says, "Don't worry about the rumors. Don't worry about it." Lane collapses on the floor, still crying out Alice's name, and the window that she is stopped at develops a crack. We then see a psychedelic dimension of color, with Lane staring away from the camera, but then she turns around and smiles. The next scene is Lane at a storehouse. She says, "What did I do? What did I do in the wired? What's the other me doing?" Lane, while crying, looks at her phone again. She picks it up and then spontaneously combusts.
I love Mob Psycho 100.
The explosion spreads through the storehouse, destroying it. Lane walks through the fire with a dead look on her face. A hard cut to red text popping up. It says "searching" while a slightly threatening beep starts playing. And then we cut to the apartment complex that Alice lives at.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just take a moment to prepare ourselves mentally for this scene, because we know it's coming.
Deep breaths. Ooh.
As we cut into Alice's room, she is being embraced by her teacher. He says, "Is it alright for you to do this with the teacher?" She says, "No, it's not."
No, it's not.
He says, "Why do it then?" She says, "Because I want to." I want to point out this scene has I think it's called a Gaussian filter over it.
Mm-hmm.
It's soft. You might not realize at first, but it's a typical fantasy filter. This is what you do to show that this isn't actually happening in the show.
Yeah, I wish they had gone a little bit further and put the bubble filter over it that you would see in doujinshi, where these where these kinds of relationships are portrayed to make it even more. I'm gonna be
real. I don't wish they'd added more.
Then you'd think the teacher's Bishi.
Well, for me, I was like, is this really happening? And Luca had to explain no, because it wasn't the fact that it did the sepia tone filter that they put over wasn't enough for me to realize this was a fantasy that was going on.
Yeah, that's fair. Actually.
Yeah, this trips up a lot of people, and it's something I think we're gonna have to revisit every episode to explain, look at the new evidence for did this happen, did this not happen. I'll go into why this scene, at least, heavily implies that it didn't happen. As Alice is looking around, she notices Lain sitting on her bed. And we cut to an unfiltered look at Alice's room. The teacher is no longer there, but Lain is, and she just looks like a mess. Alice is absolutely horrified, stares away from Lain, and then slowly moves her hand away from her crotch. This is a very serious scene, but they did the got caught masturbating so well that it kind of amuses me how well they captured the feeling of just, oh fuck, oh god, maybe if I move slowly enough they won't notice. Maybe they're T-Rexes and they can only see movement.
If you're not paying really close attention, you can miss it.
I just had an itch. I just had an itch in my crotch. I was just picking my panties, kind of rode up into my crotch, and I was just digging my panties out of my crotch. There's nothing else going on here.
But Lain on Alice's bed starts to speak. The English dub added a line, I think because Alice reacts to it, and they had to match lip flaps later, even though there's no lips flapping in this scene. In the English dub, she says,
"Shame on you, Alice,"
which I like. And then she says in both dubs, "Hey, do you know who Alice Mizuki likes? Do you know who she's thinking of when she plays with herself?"
At this point, Jenner was saying, it's you, Lain. She's gay. Well, I think she's bi, right? Or compet is a factor here. Regardless, my headcanon is Alice is interested in Lain romantically and sexually. But anyway, back to recapping the scene.
Yeah, I want to point out Lain's voice work in this. I never did look up the Japanese voice actress's name, but I feel like she changes her voice too much for the different Lain personalities, because this actually sounds like a completely different VA. Well, her English voice still sounds like Lain. I don't think that using a completely different voice is necessarily a bad thing. I just think that for this particular style of multiple incarnations of Lain, it helps if they all sound like the same person. At this point, Alice jumps out of her chair and turns around and says, "It was you who told everyone the rumors were true." Lain keeps laughing. She says, "Lain, you've always been sitting there quietly watching me. You saw what I didn't want anybody to know, when I didn't want anybody to see. And when Lain cuts her off by laughing more. And Alice says, "Tell me it isn't true, Lain. You." The word she used for you in Japanese has multiple syllables, so in English they had to add words. And in the English dub, she says, "You deceived me." So, in the English dub at least, she is taking it personally that Lain did not own up to spreading rumors in the earlier scene.
Look, you shouldn't have uploaded your fix to Lain03. They're public.
Yeah, I should point that out. When I was watching this with you and with Pfeffer and Jenner, I described it as Alice writing fanfic about her and her teacher. Then I actually watched the scene and she's not at a computer. So that's not what was happening.
Yeah, she was fantasizing.
Yeah, but that does raise the question of how did Lain find out.
How did Lain read her mind? Okay, here's...
My theory...
Okay, you go first, yeah. And then Fefner, please, yeah.
My theory is that Alice left her phone sitting on the bed. And Lain, with her tech powers, turned it on and listened to Alice, and Alice was saying things in the fantasy. And Lain just figured it out from there.
What's your theory, Fef?
I mean, Lain is ever present, much like the internet or the Wired in this case. You might think that you're not putting your fic out there because you're not writing it down, but guess what? There's a Lain right there in the room. This is actually just a prediction for the Amazon Alexa. That thing's spying on you. It's been proven.
Oh my gosh. It's
predicted. I maintain that Alice just left her phone on and pulled a dark side Phil.
Right. For me, my theory is that this version of Lain is a creepy person who's been stalking Alice. So she was just there, seeing it happen, and then decided, like, just following her, seeing it happen, and then manifested to bully her. It's not that any technology was involved, so much as this Lain...
So Lain just broke into her house.
Yeah, Lain crept into her... Basically, you know how, like, again, we're going to talk about Monster House, how ghosts can turn transparent and float through walls and creep on you in Monster Hearts.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, same thing here. This Lain creeped outside, saw Alice fantasizing and being a teenager, doing teenage things. I'll get into that in a moment. And then crept in and sat on the bed and decided to wait for Alice to notice her creeping on her and then bully her because this Lain is a horrible person.
This isn't Lain of the Wired. This is Lain of the Crowbar.
Okay, here's my joke for what we call this Lain. We call her Serial Killer Lain instead of Serial Experiments Lain. But
Before I move on to the next scene, I'm just going to do a rundown of why I think this scene implies that the encounter did not happen. I already mentioned the filter, and there's just the fact that Lain says, "I know who you're thinking about." There's nothing in this scene that implies that it actually happened, aside from the fact that they show it happening, but this is Lain. They can show things that don't actually happen in the show.
I think it's based on my headcanon of this Lain, that if it was something that had actually happened, Lain would have been blunt about the fact that it was something that actually happened because she's being cruel and nasty. So she would have not said, "I know what you're thinking." She would have said, "I know what you did." That's the confirmation I need, right? Mm-hmm. The "I know what you did last summer," serial killer Lain here. We were gonna, like, this scene here, we have this this depiction of a underage person in a relationship with somebody who is way, way older than them and in a position of power over them, is the creator depicting a thing. Does that mean that this is something the creator approves of? Does this mean that this is something the creator is into? Does this mean that this is something the creator is trying to promote? Probably not. It's just something the creator is doing for drama, right? It's something the creator is doing to tell a story, and this is the thing that, like, I wanted Loka to talk a little bit more about at this point, at this juncture.
And you'll notice they don't have a character come out of the woodwork to explicitly tell the audience that this is bad.
Yeah.
They just assume that the audience can figure out that this is bad.
I think the way the audience is being informed that this is, like, the relationship is bad and the situation is bad, is a bit layered, but I'm glad, like, and I have complicated, like, The
mere fact that if people knew that Alice was fantasizing about this, it would obliterate her social life. Mm-hmm. It's probably a good indicator that actually doing it would be even worse.
A lot of times, like, again, this is the thing I wanted to talk about like, teens and sex, and how, like, just the idea that a teenager has had sex or is thinking about sex can ruin their social life. Like, the word gets around that this girl had sex. You know, like, some dude has sex with a girl and he goes and he gloats to all of his buddy, and then that rumor spreads around the school, and then that girl gets ostracized and treated like a slut. It's a real thing that really happens, right? And so it just, like, just fantasizing about sex, just knowing about sex, just approaching sex as a teenager is just a fucking minefield, period, let alone getting caught, right? It's just, like, dreadful. At least it wasn't her parents, but still, this isn't much better, right? And my quick tangent, I'm going to take exactly 2 minutes for it. Here we go. I've already talked about this to all of you before, is for a lot of kids, even now, even though sex education has gotten a lot better here in the States, and I can't talk about how good it has gotten anywhere else in the world. I can really only talk about it here in the States. There's still some pockets here in the States, too many in the States, where sex education is just really, really awful, and the only way kids can really learn about sex and intimacy and relationships and healthy relationship dynamics is through television shows. When you have shows like the shit on the CW and the Disney Network, where like kids like stalking each other and being really inappropriate with each other is viewed through these rose-colored glasses, that is so romantic, and that's what love looks like. That these kids don't learn how to have appropriate, healthy relationships with other people, or how dating works, or how sexuality works at all. And this is the only way some incredibly sheltered, homeschooled kids with ultra-fundy Christian parents can even learn about sex, is through fanfic, through fantasization, etc. And if you don't find a good fanfic, then you learn really unhealthy things about sex, and it's just awful. The idea that we need to keep kids away from sex, and we need to protect kids from being exposed to sex, is something that actually makes kids more vulnerable to sexual predation, and it's something I am very, very strongly opposed to. As you all know, I have really strong feelings about this, that we shouldn't shy away from showing sexuality and teenagers, but with teenagers, between each other, having healthy relationships, because it is crucial for kids to see that kind of representation in media, but we cannot cross that line into sexualizing them. And there's a difference between depicting sexuality and sexualizing minors, and people need to calm the fuck down. Thank you for my 2 minutes.
So the next scene, the power lines are actually the focus of the opening, so I get to talk about them. Lain is staring at the power lines and appears to be having a bad trip. This is where I would reference that movie where the dead baby crawls across the ceiling, but I can't remember the title of the movie.
Baby's Day Out.
And Baby's Day Out, R-rated cut.
Is that one of the Final Destinations? The Final Destination movies
No,
are the ones I like. Oh, there's that movie where the baby is turned, like a woman is pregnant and her baby is turned into a vampire or turned into a zombie because she gets bit by a zombie while she's pregnant. Is that the one you're talking about? And then it becomes like a demon zombie baby.
I'm talking about the scene where the guy is on drugs and his parents force him to stop taking drugs, and when he's in withdrawal, he hallucinates his dead baby brother crawling across the ceiling.
I have not seen the show.
It's a movie.
Oh, well, either. I've not seen it.
But, like, can somebody else pipe up and tell me you've at least heard of this scene?
Nah.
Dude, I have no idea what you're talking about.
What the hell? I'm gonna put the title of the movie up in bold letters on the screen right now. Look at the screen. I didn't look it up because I thought, okay, well, there's 4 of us. Surely somebody will remember the title. But none of you even seen the scene.
Nope.
Anyways, the bad trip in more detail. We see Lain behind the RGB component cables while her shadow starts to grow. We see Lain in her bear suit suspended in the air, surrounded by power lines, and then she becomes a shadow. And then we get real Lain confronting evil Lain, who is still sitting on the bed. Real Lain says, "Who are you? You're not me. I would never do what you do." Evil Lain said, in Japanese, she says, "Watashi wa," and in English, she says, "Oh, spare me." And so Watashi wa is just I.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess in English, they thought they needed more just syllables to break up. Let me try this again. You can't see Evil Lane's lips, but you can see Real Lane's lips. So her lips need to stop and start flapping at certain times. With Evil Lane, you can fudge the line, but there still needs to be enough time pass so that Real Lane can cut her off. So she can't just say I, because that's not enough time. So they had her say, "Oh, spare me," which is a little over the top, but I kind of like it. Real Lane says, "Stop it. Why are you acting like the part of me that I hate?"
Mm-hmm.
And in English, she goes on to say, "I wish you would just go away. I will kill you."
Mm-hmm.
Real Lane teleports her hands around Evil Lane's throat and begins strangling her. Everything personal, kid. There are flashes of lights in the background. I think these flashes of lights also showed up when Hodgson died.
Mm-hmm.
Or something similar to them. And then Evil Lane starts laughing and shouts out, "Look at me, I'm committing suicide."
Yeah. This was hard for me, this is hard for me, but yeah, you go first, Loco.
So in an earlier episode, I talked about how in the English dub, Lane's voice actress slipped into a voice that I really appreciated. when she's screaming at the knights, telling them they're pathetic, and calling them all a bunch of losers, she slips into the evil Lain voice. The Japanese voice actress does not do that. And I think it's important that these other voices pop up in the other lanes. Because evil Lain can talk like real Lain, and it's important to me that real Lain can talk like evil Lain.
Yeah. I think it's important that we recognize that this is Lain. That what for serial killer Lain says and what the other Lanes have said are true. That they are also Lain. That they are all Lain. That they're all fragments of the same person. That yeah. I feel like this is an important thing to make sure the audience knows is that yes, these are separate lanes, but yet they are also the same lanes. These are parts of Lain. This is, if you remember me talking about, that's like that multiple personality disorder, like that pluralism, right? So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Did you want to talk more about this, and does anybody else want to talk about this? Fefner, you haven't talked that much. I don't know if you have anything to say about this, but I'm about to get dark again. So if somebody else would like to go first before I kill the mood, that'd be cool.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
All right. So as you all know, like I'm really, really triggered by suicide and even the mention of suicide sometimes because I lost my fiance to suicide 15 years ago. And so when somebody you care about dies by suicide or dies in general, but dies traumatically and suddenly and surprisingly, you often blame yourself. You could have done more, you could have said more, you could have been more. And the thing that keeps striking me about the show is how realistically Lain's coping with those feelings is. As I told you from the beginning, I was under the opinion that Lain had a closer relationship with Cheetah than she lets on. And I believe it's because she's fractioned off that closer relationship into one of these plurals, or many of these plurals, to kind of spare herself those feelings of guilt and grief. But now they're coming back to her. And many times perhaps I'm projecting so much, but I spent about almost 5 years doing suicide prevention counseling. So this is a pretty common experience with a lot of people I counseled when I worked on the hotlines and did prevention after losing my fiance to suicide, which is that you think you killed them, that you're the one who did it, because you didn't act or you weren't enough for any number of reasons. Like for me, it was just I should have gone back down there. I should have pushed harder. You get into that place and like grief of recovering from a loss like this. There's the 5 stages of grief. Kind of go through like that stage of denial, that stage of anger, that stage of bargaining. All going through all that stage of depression. I spend a lot of my time on that stage, folks. And then ultimately that stage of acceptance, which I'm still not sure I'll personally ever get into, because how can you accept the unacceptable? But this was never okay to lose somebody this important to me. It wasn't okay for Lain to lose somebody who was clearly important to her and what she's been going through this whole show. And when you finally meet that part of you who knows that you've hidden, like that you've locked away from yourself, and who is gleefully like mocking you, right? That's the you would want to kill that person who killed the person you loved. You would want to get rid of that person where you like, when you partition yourself up, you put all the ugliness into that partition. You separate it away from yourself as part of your denial, right? And now that person who is totally not you is that person you hate, but that's everything you hate about yourself, and that's somebody who's still you. And you would want to kill that person. So this scene was really rough for me to watch, because like it was incredibly relatable and a lot of the scenes that have been going on in this show were incredibly relatable to me as a survivor of suicide, both an attempt on my own end and somebody in my life who I loved, who was precious to me, succeeding in her own attempt. Seeing what Lain's been going through this entire show and the psychological themes and messages that are being explored in the show that I don't think anybody else is really picking up on, and that I don't want to bring up a lot because it brings down the mood like this. So, yeah. Now I'm gonna lighten the mood by saying, but maybe she's into it, right? Like maybe she's into being choked. Like maybe this is a hot sex thing. If you have sex with your Yeah, if you have sex with your plural self, is it incest? Is it masturbation? Like, come on, people, work with me here. What do we work like? What are we going on here? If you have sex with an evil version of
I
yourself,
was so on a smaller level, I still understood like what this scene was trying to get at. If you're going to like improve yourself, make yourself a better person, which anyone can do, and plenty of people are good, but anyone can be better. You have to acknowledge the parts of you that need to be changed. And sometimes, like with me, more so when I was a hormonal teenager, but still from time to time, it can be hard for me to really do any actual self improvement because I just get too caught up in hating the part of me that I want to change, that I
same.
forget to actually
Yep,
change it.
same.
I've never really likened it to suicide the way that this show does, but um, when I first got to that line when I was first watching this show, it just I don't know if I want to say resonated with me. That's one of the lines that I just always remember from this show.
Mm-hmm.
Is Evil Lain gleefully screeching that out?
Yeah, and I think it's like Evil Lain, in my opinion, my projection, my experience. Evil Lain is saying this to traumatize real Lain, right? Because real Lain is aware that a suicide happened, right? And so now, and suicide is a trigger for real Lain. So evil Lain is gleefully saying this to trigger, and antagonize real Lain. That's my projection on this scene. But I do want you to continue talking about your experience with this scene. Sorry.
I was done.
Okay. Yeah. If anybody else wants to talk about their experience with this scene, that'd be cool. We're effectively in grief, grief counseling now. Everybody, welcome to to group grief counseling. I don't know if anybody else has had an experience like this or dealt with something like that, as Lucas said, had that part of themselves that they just don't like and that they wish they could change. I have a lot of that, but I don't want to make this the Jenner Talks Forever podcast, right?
I don't really have anything to say about it.
I'm not sure. I could say something, but I'm not sure that I have anything to say that would add anything there, because there are some things that you see, and anything that you would add onto it almost feels a weirdly vulgar.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm honestly about that way about the entire episode, that almost commenting on about a half of it almost feels, not that I don't think other people should, but more that for me it's kind of what do I even fucking say about that?
Yeah. This episode is really, really rough.
All right. Let me find my notes. The scene continues. Real Lane says, "Why? Why are you warm? Why do I have to feel your body heat?" Which is just one of those lines. I don't know exactly what that means, but that fucks me up.
For me, if you remember, I talked about
that's the thing to say.
In the last episode, I mentioned how seeing Alice touch Lain was a big deal for me because nobody else had touched her up until that point, so I wasn't sure Lain was even real, or if she was just a projection of data or whatever. So again, here we have confirmed last episode that Lain is real, and now we are confirming in this episode that this Lain is also physical and can be touched and interacted with, has a pulse, is warm. That's what I think is important being conveyed here, is this Lain is just as real.
Yeah, I guess I didn't think about that.
Yeah.
In the English dub, Real Lane goes on to say, "Is there no escaping you?" And again, in the English dub, Evil Lane says, "But how can you?" And then in both dubs, she says, "I'm Lane, aren't I?" And then she does the knife cat face. In response to this, Real Lane shouts "No," and then another Lane also shouts "No," but I'm not sure if it's still Real Lane or not, or if it's Evil Lane, because it's completely different. It's not shot in the way that either of the two lanes are shot. We then cut to the two lanes who are now apart from each other, and Evil Lane continues to laugh.
Yeah, I have to say, maybe Fefner, you can comment on this. I like Evil Lane's laugh. Fefner, any thoughts on Evil Lane's laugh?
Well, she listened to a different laugh.
Yeah, it is good.
Yeah.
But I do not know the laugh that you are talking about.
Tell us tell us a bit about how this plays out in the subbed version.
I did.
I want Fafner to, because that's the version she's watching. And Fafner doesn't talk enough. It hasn't talked enough this episode. It's almost like she's not even here.
I write my summaries using the sub script.
No, I'm here in the corner on the bed, and I'm going to tell everybody your embarrassing secrets. That's my role here.
Yeah, am I somebody who can be embarrassed by anything?
Well, you've made a good point. You got me there.
It's like, I am
We
curious.
cut back-
Well, no, I am curious what her laugh sounds like in the Japanese, and I'm too lazy to go listen to it. So,
It's a little more shrill.
okay. Is it like the foo 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 laugh, or?
Not
No,
really.
it's
Okay.
very unsettling, though.
Okay, cool. All right, sorry.
It's
continue.
like chuckles.
It's
Okay.
sort of like a normal laugh, but like also kind of robotic at the same time.
Oh, that sounds really cool. I might actually go listen to it
Yeah,
then.
it's dope.
Okay, sorry. Continue.
We cut back to the chattering people, but this time they all have Lane's face. Like a mannequin of Lane's face. God has appeared as a hand-drawn rendering of a dope CGI effect. That is the best way to describe him. He's just like a CG liquid sphere that somebody then drew in traditional animation.
God is Mercury in a lava lamp. Do not consume him, no matter how cool he may look.
Lane says, "Who are these people?" And God says, "They're all you. I said that you've always existed in the wire, didn't I? You're the same as me. You're omnipresent in the wire. Wherever anyone is, wherever they go, you've always been there. You've watched what they didn't want others to see. You've told everyone about it, that's all. It was the right thing to do. The wire's information should be shared, shouldn't it?" Lane says, "Everything you say is a lie." God says, "Why is that?" Lane says, "Alice and the others said they saw me in the wired when I wasn't there. As long as I'm aware of myself, my true self is inside of me. You're telling me that all these dupes are me?" And as she says this, she starts knocking the chattering people with her head over. "What a load of garbage. If I'm really what you say I am, then..." She stops, and God says, "Then what, Lain?" And Lain says, "Then their memories of being seen by Lain. I could delete that information." And God says, "That's true. Give it a try. You were born with that kind of power." We then get to another red text scene that says deleting. Same red text, same sound effect. And then we get to school. Lain walks to school when the Lain gang sees her again. Lain winces, but then notices that they look happy to see her and are calling her name out. She thinks, did they really forget? They did. When Lain turns to approach them, another Lain exits her body instead. The other Lain grabs Alice's arm and says, "I want to go to Siberia today."
Again, see why, folks.
This Lain is animated like Evil Lain. The first time I watched this, I didn't actually pick up on this, but she has the weird smile that Evil Lain has.
I was going to talk about that at the end of this, but yeah. Good.
Sorry.
No, because this is
and
fine.
in the English dub at least, Bridget Hoffman puts just a little gravel in her voice during this scene, so it still kind of sounds like Evil Lain, but not exactly like it. It's really good. Evil Lain says, "What should I wear, Alice?" Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Gonna be more overtly gay with girl I know you are gay for.
Listen, Lain, if I'm going to exist, I'm going to do some nice things for you too, okay?
Look, we brought in the top folks. Finally, the person who will actually act on this yearning. We got it, people. All it took is, this is the thing, it bothers me, it's the evil one doing it though, right? Because then it's like acting on these impulses, only an evil act to me, like that bothers me
I was
a
going
little.
to say, see, I'm not all bad.
Acting on your gay impulses, not bad. We found a redeeming quality in serial killer Lain, folks.
Lain keeps shouting, "Stop it, I'm me, I'm over here." And Evil Lain walks up to her and says, "That's right, Lain is Lain, and I am me." Then she turns grayscale and pops out of existence. No fade effect, they just stop drawing her on the very next frame.
She gone.
The final scene is Lain at her computer. She says, "Hello, Navi." The Navi says, "Hello, Lain." And Lain says, "I'm me, right?" There's no other me but me, right?
I remember the joke I
And
said
the
for
episode
this.
ends.
Yeah, so this is why God has that. There are no other. I am the Lord thy God. There shall be no other gods before me. So that God can avoid these kinds of situations.
I am the Lane. You all know my name now. I got it all, cash money and fame.
I think like for me, like in the 80s and 90s especially, the fact the gay character also being like a secret killer, right? Or not even a secret killer, like an overt
She's
murderer.
not a killer.
Or just
She's
like
just
the
mean.
like the gay character being like evil, like being a villain, being mean and bad was a pretty common trope in and still to this day actually is still a too much of a thing, right? Where if they are gay, they have to be,
Yeah.
homicidal, right, in some way. Because if they're
Mhm.
homosexual, they might as well be homicidal too. It just makes sense to put the two homos together. Um, but yeah, I mean, it bothers me in a way. So the fact that we got this kind of, vicious, like monstrous character who is also the one who will actually act on those gay feelings that she has for Alice and that she knows Alice has for her, bothers me just on the fact that again, this happens way too much, right?
Yeah. I think ultimately they're trying to justify this part of Lane's existence. There isn't just an evil Lane. There
Mm-hmm.
is an impulsive Lane.
Yeah.
There is a Lane that only thinks about, like, this would be fun, this would be funny, this will put me in a position of power. And for that Lane to be like, I think this girl is cute and I'm going to act on my impulses makes sense. But yeah, you're right. That does mean that the more evil Lane is now actively doing the gay shit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that it just again it bothers me, but it is kind of cool to see. But again, like the context is different in the 80s and 90s because it's an evil character doing it. It kind of suggests that this is only a thing that evil people do. That was kind of the messaging back in those
Mm-hmm.
days. I doubt that I have a lot of theories about like executive meddling and like to the extent to what somebody could get away with in this day and age at this time.
I don't think any executive had anything to say on this show.
Yeah, I just my more thing is like to what extent could you say no a good character is acting on gay feelings and still have that show exist in the 80s and 90s? Like even now in the aughts and even in the aught tens it's still hard to find, right? Um
Yeah.
like
I
it's
mean,
just
Una did it because
yeah,
Ikuhara lied to the
yeah,
producer's face.
Ikahara lied, and that's why we have it. And even then, Shiori's still kind of an evil girl. Just Jury is fine, right? And they don't. And
You're allowed to have evil gay
I'm
characters if there are a dozen good gay
I agree
characters.
with you. I'm tired of the trope. I'm only complaining about tiredness of the trope. I'm not tiredness with the trope. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not saying it's a bad thing, right? I'm not saying it's illegal.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying you shouldn't do it. I'm saying there was too much of it at the time. It was nice to see good, like if there's a gay character, it's a Shiori, it's a this, right? If it exists at all. So
Mm-hmm.
so Revolutionary Girl Utna was revolutionary in that way, in that there were gay characters on the show who weren't sinister and evil, who were just being gay, and it was fine, right? And that was revolutionary for me to view. It was one of the first pieces of queer media where the gay character wasn't a freaking homicidal crazy person ruining the other person's life, right? Or where the only gay person was the one doing
Mm-hmm.
that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Homosexuality was, and transgenderism, which was called transsexuality back in those days, folks, sorry, was deeply pathologized, stigmatized by psychologists. Still to this day, in the 90s, homosexuality was still in the DSM-V, and transsexuality was still in the DSM-V as a mental illness. Gay conversion therapy was still a thing going on in this time. Cognitive behavioral therapy was kind of just coming into the trend here in the mid 90s and was just starting to get blended in with behavioral therapy, which we already talked about earlier, to become CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, not cock and ball torture, though it is both. Yeah. And cognitive behavioral therapy is really good at treating depression and things like that. But DBT, which is dialectical behavioral therapy, is really good for treating PTSD, bipolar, borderline personality disorder, and things like that. And DBT is actually a pretty recent discovery invention. It just happened about, maybe I'd say, a decade ago, probably less than that. I literally started learning about it in 2008. It was just a thing that it's finally started being talked about in psychology circles when I was studying psychology in undergrad around the later aughts. So it's still relatively new on the scene, but it's good shit. So again, since we're talking a bit about heavier subjects here, I did want to kind of start with this and let people know that if you're struggling with stuff, try and get yourself some therapy, talk to a counselor. I can't recommend cognitive behavioral therapy enough for treating depression, treating bipolar, treating negative thoughts. It's really good. DBT is really good for trauma, borderline, and bipolar and things of that nature to really help you get control over yourself. Because when you've got it really bad, you feel like you're just this creature of instinct that just has no control over your life, and it's just so quick. You can just spiral so quick. So, again, serious talk here from Jenner, folks. Healthcare in the United States is gross and disgusting and expensive. The mental health care system is horrible, but just getting therapy and getting help is life-changing. It really helps you have a better relationship with yourself. Speaking of having good relationships with yourself, so that your evil self doesn't cuck you.
All right. Unless anybody has something they would like to say, I think we can move on to our ending bits.
Being on the wired is, Lain, shut the fuck up and get out. I'm going to be friends with Alice now.
All right, Jenner, go ask Alice.
Hey, so first I have two questions for you. A person on this podcast, our friend Alice.
All right, hit me.
The first is, when we talk about on the show, Alice, do your ears perk up every time you hear your own name, wondering if we're gonna talk about you, talk to you and talk about you?
Yes, actually, it's very weird.
It must be so awful when we say Alice talking about show Alice, and you're just like, oh, am I being talked to and spoken about? This must be so disorienting.
It is very weird experience.
All right, now, actual Alice that exists and is our friend. What are your thoughts on Alice so far, as the foremost expert on Alice's?
Wow, I feel really bad for her.
Mm-hmm.
It makes more sense that she doesn't elaborate to Lain, because holy shit, I wouldn't want to say that out loud either. If there were rumors about me of this, anything like this, and I was in high school and named Alice, I would not want to say it out loud either. And it says a lot that Alice does not want to believe Lain did it, even though a lot of people think that Lain did it. I am not going to judge a teenager for their problematic fantasies. Mm-hmm. Not because I don't think they're bad, but because literally everyone under the age of 20 is stupid. I learned this when I was teaching. It's actually part of growing up. And
the prefrontal cortex hasn't developed yet, and actually hasn't finished fully developing until you're 24 or 25. That's the part of your brain that lets you make good decisions. Mm-hmm. So before 24 and 25, you're just dumb and really bad at making decisions, especially when you're going through puberty and there's just all these horrible things happening to your body. You're not in a good decision-making place. Do continue, Alice.
So I'm not gonna touch whether that's a good thing or not. I think we were all pretty agreed on that. But wow, I feel really bad for her. Jesus Christ. Mm-hmm. I really desperately hope that Alice and Lain can be friends after this. And also, I feel really bad for her.
Yeah.
Well, Alice doesn't remember it anymore.
Yeah.
Lain deleted everyone's memories.
I remember talking in Men in Black about the ethics of the fleshy thing.
The neuralizer.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And I remember getting in big ethical arguments with people about the neuralizer. I don't. Again, Fafner needs to go to bed here soon, so I don't want to take too much longer. But I think this is a horrible thing to do. to just rewrite everything. In fact, I explored
Uh-huh.
this storyline with Panty, if you remember. Where, like, if you rewrite it, then you don't learn from it. There are no consequences, and you don't grow as a person. You just keep hiding from the bad things that you've done, right? Just
So
wishing.
for our viewers at home,
Yeah.
I should explain. Panty is a character from a Dragon Ball tabletop RPG campaign that we ran, and she is named Panty because she is related to Trunks.
Yeah.
And Jenner wanted to keep the underwear theme name going.
Yeah. And Panty's whole storyline was that she came from a very traumatic apocalyptic future that she was trying to prevent from happening again. And her whole storyline was about how she made several mistakes in this timeline as well that she could just go back and undo, and how instead she chose to not do that and just learn from her mistakes and grow as a person. Because Saiyans in Dragon Ball Z are all about becoming physically powerful, but my spicy Dragon Ball Z opinions is that very few, if any, Saiyan characters actually develop as characters, except Vegeta. Vegeta and I guess Gohan to some extent.
Gohan.
And future Trunks a lot. Like, so basically every non-Goku
Everyone but Goku.
every non-Goku Saiyan actually develops as a character. But it's really more about like physical strength and not about like emotional strength or like anything like that. So like I wanted to explore that kind of strength, like understanding like Saiyans get more powerful when they lose physically. What about when they lose emotionally, right? So when you can just like erase your mistakes, you kind of, it gives you like that out, like to retcon it. And no, like in the real world, you just got to live with your mistakes and consequences, and you just got to learn to be a better person and make your bed and sleep in it, right? And the important thing about, we all kind of wish like if we could go back in time, that one thing we would change, right? Or those handfuls of things we would change. In my younger days, I had some things that I would have wanted to change. I made that Homura wish, right? Nowadays, I don't think I would change a thing, even with all the loss I've experienced, because knowing what I know now, all those events, however how as extremely traumatic as they were, led to me being here with all of you. So I wouldn't want to change a thing because it might put this future at risk, the growth that I've made as a person, just because I was horrified of a thing I did or an experience that happened to me. Running from it isn't the answer. Facing it, answering for it, accounting from it, and learning from it and growing as a person is the answer. And if you don't do that, then you just stay that person. That's my spicy hot take. So that's
now
the
it is
Alice
time.
opinion. Yeah, now we need to talk about what this episode is about and all that other shit. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Now it is time for the portion of the podcast where I ask my co-hosts what they think the plot is. Alice, you still going on about that God thing?
Unfortunately, yes, I am. um,
Cool.
Though I do have a little bit of a twist here. Now that we have a little bit more about the alternate lanes, I think that we may have a situation where it's emanations of Lain, or Lain herself may in fact be an emanation of something else. So I'm gonna actually put a moratorium on Lain as God.
Oh no. That's like half our jokes.
Yeah. So what are you gonna say it is now? Now you got to go into something else.
Well, she can figure that out next episode.
It's true.
Fafnir, what do you think the plot is?
The plot is that Lain is the Wired, and that's bad for everybody, including Lain.
Is it bad for God? Or the intelligence calling itself God? The cool
probably.
Mercury pool.
I mean, look, God seems like they have their shit together, but, like, you don't know them. That's just the Mercury they're presenting on the Wired. In real life, they've got their own trouble. They're probably wanted for tax evasion.
Alright. Jenner, what do you think the plot is?
So I'm gonna start with the serious one, and then I'm gonna do the jokey one. So obviously this is a slice of life anime teaching us very important lessons, And the lessons that this one is teaching us is you gotta make sure you have a lot of ad blockers and spyware blockers when you browse pornography, or you're gonna get all sorts of viruses and shit on your computer.
Remember to set your fix on private when you upload them to Lain 03. She is sitting right on your bed. She will roast you, even if you don't get any viewers anywhere else.
Yeah. The shame, like, please, if there's one thing that I could change about the culture, I would like young people to be more sexually liberated and to be less ashamed of sex and sexuality, because I feel like it's really bad. I really already went on this tangent, but I feel it really makes kids more susceptible to predation, and that knowing about sex and how sex works and what a appropriate and inappropriate touch is and just what consent is. It's horrific to me how little people know about consent and what consent really is. Like, really, this is horrific. I live a horror story when I do a lot of mentoring of young people, right? And very few of them have an actual realistic grasp of what consent is and what it looks like, thanks to the fucking media, right? And just thanks to so much fucking awful out there. And so if I could do one thing for the culture going forward, I would want young people to be less ashamed about asking about sex, less ashamed about being sexual, less ashamed about researching sex, and to be more informed about sex and sexuality and consent and things of that nature and kink, etc. Period. There's nothing wrong with being sexual and having sex and being interested in sex, even if you're underage. It's fine. The problem is when you are being sexualized, and it's important to learn that distinction. Anyway, this is a slice of life episode about not getting you're getting viride by unsafe internet browsing. But yeah, the serious is this show is exploring a lot of really serious themes. I talked to Luca about it a lot. It's exploring going through the grief process of losing somebody to suicide, to a traumatic loss. It's exploring mental illness and the feelings of isolation. There's some autism coding and neurodivergence coding, an extreme amount of neurodivergence coding going in here in Lain, especially, and in Mika. I hope her name is Mika. I'm sorry, I already forgot the sister's name. Sorry. Especially
Mika,
yeah,
you're right.
Yep. There's a lot of like that feeling of exploring actually being queer is going on in this show a lot, where you feel like your parents don't understand you, barely interact with you, nobody gets you, and you're the only one in the world that's like you. That's a real feeling when you're queer and you nobody else is out of the closet and you feel like you're the only weird queer kid in school. This show is exploring a lot. The plot of the show is to touch on a whole lot of serious shit. That's what's going on in Serial Experiments Lain. This is a beautiful show, and I love the show a lot, and I really strongly recommend it.
And with that, that closes us out for this week. Next week we will cover episode 9. Bye, everyone.
Goodbye.
Bye.
So long.